And now, the best 60-ish seconds of your week.
And once again, from beautiful Capone, it's September 11th, and we all remember that horrific day where the most deadly attack on American soil ever took place. And we remember those heroes who died there, and we pray for their souls. And this weekend, we're at 50 days until the presidential election of 2020. And as we come down to the wire, what's the state of the race? Well, for the Democrats, it really hasn't changed much. They don't like Donald Trump, and their entire case seems to be built around death by 1,000 cuts, if you will. Every week we hear, this is the worst thing that President Trump's ever done. This is the most outrageous thing he's ever said. This week it was The Atlantic, by the way, published by a mega supporter and donor to the Biden campaign, and completely discredited by anybody that was in the room. Even John Bolton, who's hardly a big defender of Donald J. Trump, came to his defense on this one. And we had the Bob Woodward saga and alleged things said there by the president. Ronald Reagan called Bob Woodward a liar. It's good enough for me. We'll go from there. But there isn't much discussion about policy by the Biden folks. Why? Because they know that the far left platform on which President Biden is running simply doesn't play with most of America, especially with those undecided and yet to be persuaded voters. Things like the war on fracking in Pennsylvania, for example, that killed 7, 8, 900,000 jobs. The Hyde Amendment, which Nancy Pelosi this week says she's going to try to do away with. Joe Biden, for most of his career, a supporter of the Hyde Amendment, told people he still was, now says he isn't. If you remove the Hyde Amendment, it would require taxpayers to pay for abortions. Regardless of whether you're pro-choice or pro-life, most people don't think that taxpayers ought to be asked to foot the bill. And so, whether or not policy can become an issue in this campaign remains to be seen. But the race is very, very tight, as are several races for the U.S. Senate around the country. We're going to take a look at those next week because control of the Senate looms very large, regardless of who takes the White House. And on the business and economic front, last week we suggested that volatility was the key word, and boy, did we see a lot of that this week. The tech sector, which had been the big push behind the boon of August, the sell-off there continued this week, with the NASDAQ dropping another 3.5 points. The NASDAQ was 10% off its September 2nd high in 3 trading days. But think about this. The NASDAQ is still up 22% year to date. That's really good economic news. So with the Dow down this week, the S&P down, and the NASDAQ continuing to decline, what's next week look like? Because I think the trading days of next week are going to likely show us what the next month or so is going to look like. It's still the Trump economy that's going to be at the center of the November elections, and how that's reflected in the markets is very important. The markets aren't the economy, and the economy isn't the markets, but it's a good indicator, one the president likes to use, and one which people easily understand. So watch for what's going to be the indicators next week as the major indices reach their 50-day moving average. 50 days seems to be all the chatter of this week's best 60 seconds. And finally, since I'm here in my native land of Brazil, I think I ought to say something about the man on my shirt, Jair Bolsonaro. President Bolsonaro is often referred to as the Trump of the Tropics. And you know, the parallels between what's going on here in Brazil and what's going on back at home in the good old US of A are uncanny. Here, the media beats up President Bolsonaro on a daily basis. They really hate him, but the people love him. President Bolsonaro, like President Trump, is blamed for the Wuhan flu epidemic. He's blamed for the downturns in the economy, which came as a result of lockdowns and shutdowns by mayors and governors. They blame him for every word he utters. It's always the worst thing that's ever been said and the worst thing that's ever been done, and yet his popularity continues to rise. On a serious note, Brazil has suffered greatly under socialist governments for the past 20 years prior to Bolsonaro coming into office. So please, pray that he's successful. Pray for Brazil. And pray for President Bolsonaro. Because for now, that is the best 60-ish seconds of your week.